Yo, what's up guys? It's me, Bad Choice Noah, or Noah, whatever you want to call me. And today we are starting, I think what we might call the story of George or something. I don't really know what we're gonna call it.
Gary George Chronicles?
Something like that. You'll know by the title. So basically, I don't know how many parts this is gonna be, but you guys seem to enjoy his stories. So we're gonna create like a whole, like, I don't know the word to describe it, like kind of like a movie. How would you describe it?
I would just say we're gonna, create this again, the story of from the beginning through the end of George's life and the impact he had on so many, including myself, and really what molded me to the person I am today with those experiences when I was young. And so it's like a playlist. We'll put it out in a playlist, and you guys can, watch it from start to finish if you want. Ask questions. We can answer those questions. And let me start by saying that all of this is 100% factual. None of it is fabricated. We may, if you guys really like this and it starts to get kind of popular where you want to hear more, we might even bring in one of my best friends who was involved in this so he can kind of corroborate all the things I'm saying. And who knows, we'll see what goes from there.
Like you said, if you got any questions or anything, feel free to ask, and we'll answer if we can. So if you want to start, I don't know where this is gonna start or anything. So
I figured I would start this kind of with, so that I could set up what this was all about and how this kind of happened. And you got to remember that this kind of part of my life was probably a good 5 or 6 years of my life, and at that time George was my best friend. And how we met was actually in 8th grade in middle school. We were both in a science class together, and to be totally honest with you, we kind of both got in trouble and had a detention, and we came from 2 different schools when we went to the middle school, so we didn't know each other before then. And that's how we met, was in detention. And the thing was is that he had just started playing drums, and I was starting to play bass guitar, and we were both into kind of, like heavy, dark metal and stuff like that, and we thought, let's start a band, and we actually started a band, and throughout most of the years that we'll continue to be talking, we were in this band. It was called Cemetery, of all things, and we played kind of a really dark type of music, heavy, and it got pretty popular in this area. We were playing some of the biggest bars and biggest nightclubs and stuff like that during that time, but that's a whole nother story. The point is that as I got to know George and we started playing music together, our bond continued to grow, and I want to kind of take you on a little bit of the backstory there. So apparently, as the story goes, his grandma that lived right down the street, who we talked to all the time, kind of, I guess, was into kind of like what they would call white magic. And then ironically enough, his grandma on his other side, his dad's side, was a Satanist, okay? And she had passed away when he was a baby. The reason I'm telling you this is there was this really major yin and yang within his family, or as the story goes, if you guys believe in this stuff. And one of the things that was really weird was that his mom told, again, a lot of what I'll tell you is like what she told me after George passed away, and she said that George used to tell her that when he did good things when he was a young kid, 2, 3, 4 years old, and you've got this house that I'll continue to talk about was a 2-story house. Again, I told you he died up in his bedroom upstairs, and I'll continue to revisit that. But he said that he would sit at the bottom of the stairs, and at the top of the stairs, his grandma that was no longer alive used to yell at him when he did good things as a baby. And then when he would do bad things, she would tell him he did good. And this was like when he was just 2, 3, 4 years old. And again, she had already passed, and he was telling his mom this story about how grandma would yell at him for doing good things. So there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened at this house. And one of the stories that George's mom shared with me after his death was the fact when they first moved in the house, that the upstairs was unfinished. And actually, like I said, the upstairs was like this, right? And you guys have all seen those kind of bungalow houses with, the sides were are kind of like little short walls that go to the ceiling truss. And I guess she said when they moved in that the upstairs was unfinished and those walls were just solid walls. And when they decided to remodel, they actually made those walls into like closet space and so on like that. But before this happened, there were 3 boys in his family. There was his older brother, his younger brother, and then George was the middle. And when they first moved in, I guess just like anybody in kind of a house, things get misplaced. And what she had said was things like socks would go missing, utensils like forks and stuff like that would just go missing in the house. And they didn't think much of it, right? You got a few young boys and some other things were happening, and they just thought they misplaced stuff. It was no big deal. Well, apparently when they opened up these walls to make them into closets, in the walls were all the things that were missing. So there was all the utensils, the socks, shirts, and all this stuff literally in that cubby hole beside, that turned out to be closets. And that just gives you kind of the backstory of like the weirdness of that house. And I'm not sure if it's something with the house or if it was something that they brought in, the fact that, if you believe that George's grandma had something to do with the black magic side, I'm not 100% sure. And again, I don't even know what I know or believe. All I know is what I experienced, and I'm always still confused to this day about it, to be totally honest with you. But in particular, the upstairs and those closets were always like probably one of the most spooky areas of the house. For whatever reason, there was always a lot of crazy stuff going on. And so regardless, when I started hanging around George and we started playing music together and we started getting a band together, we actually practiced in the basement. Like I told you guys before, his mom worked a job where she didn't come home except on the weekends, and his dad was actually kind of checked out. They were divorced, and he hardly was ever around and stuff like that. So we spent a lot of time obviously at the house practicing and then just hanging out as friends, and it was always crazy. Number one, when you went there, it was always like super just really super scary and sketchy. You always felt like someone was watching you or something was going on, and there was always like things moving in the distance that you would, out of the corner of your eye, you'd see something go, and you never quite knew what was going on. And then, like I had mentioned, at night was the worst. When I'd spend the night there, which was pretty often, quite frankly, it was always the most creepy. Again, up in George's room, those walls were always making noise. There was always like banging and stuff like that going on, and it's hard to explain unless you've been there. But every single person to a person that hung out at that house, and there were dozens and dozens of people over the course of that 4 or 5 year window when I was over there a lot, that came to hang out with us in the band, and everybody had experiences at that house. And to me, it kind of seemed like, again, a lot of those experiences kind of centered around George, right? It was like he seemed to have a connection with that side of things, whether it was, his, past grandma, or maybe the grandma that lived down the street that was always trying to fight the good and the evil part of things. It's kind of hard to really say, and I don't really know, I don't know what it was all about. And that's what makes it even more difficult, right, is the fact that all these years later, there's more questions than there were answers. All I know is that all these crazy things happen. But again, George himself was kind of the most mysterious of the bunch, right, because he seemed to really revel in the things that were going on. Like it seemed like his brothers were kind of freaked out all the time about they were kind of scared of the house.
Like how did his brothers show? Because I didn't even know he had brothers. So you said they were scared, so they were like completely opposite of George?
Yeah, both his brothers, older brother Tim and his younger brother Joe, were definitely not anything like George. I mean, they were, it seemed like they knew something was strange going on at the house, and maybe even knew that there was something strange with George, but they didn't seem to like be into it at all, whereas George seemed to like love it. Like he seemed to like when we were upstairs and something crazy would happen, he would get the biggest smile on his face, and
Really?
almost like he knew what was happening, and he would play on it too. You know what I mean? He would like kind of taunt you with it, because something would happen, like a huge bang in the closet, and then he would like turn the light out, you know, like pitch black in the room,
What?
and then just giggle, you know, and so
What
you're
the-
sitting here. I mean, it was crazy, you know. As a matter of fact, remember the last time I told you there was the guy Rodney that spent the
Yeah.
night and George was creeping
Yeah.
on him and stuff like that. Well, he actually, this was a crazy time of my life, guys. Rodney actually ran away from home and was ditching at George's house because, you know, no one
Sure.
really knew. And of course, you know, his parents didn't know where he was and so like that. So
No phones, nothing.
yeah,
like
there's no
that,
cell
so
phones
it's
back
just
then
like
or
he's
anything
gone.
like that. And so one night, Rodney said he was sleeping inside the closet area because
Oh.
he was trying to hide from George's mom, because George's mom couldn't know that he had run away. And he said he literally, the next day, he went back home because he said in the middle of the night, he woke up and there were things in his face, like people in his face. And he said literally, I woke up, he goes, there were people in my face. He goes, I was never so freaked out in my entire life. I didn't know what the heck it was. He literally came out of the closet, which those little closet areas, and he went home to his parents. I mean, like literally, he said, and never, he still would come over every now and then, but he never spent the night in that house ever again.
God, dude.
And I'm going to wrap up with one last quick story about the house. So George's Uncle Kenny, who ironically enough, he was a motorcycle club kind of guy, you know, big burly Harley Davidson dude. We all loved him, but he was a big dude, you know, everyone was afraid of him. And when I guess the kids were young, and again, the upstairs wasn't finished at that point. He actually fell on some hard times and he moved in the upstairs. And again, this was George's dad's brother. And he was staying upstairs in just open attic area. You know what I mean? He had his bedroom up there. And he was working days while they worked nights, or vice versa, whatever way it went. Regardless, what happened was they hardly ever seen each other, right? They were on different, you know, George's mom and dad and Uncle Kenny were on different, you know, shifts and stuff like that. And I guess a couple weeks had gone by and they hadn't seen each other, and George's mom ran into him at a grocery store and said, "Oh, Kenny, what's been going on? Can you really do me a huge favor?" And you know, again, he's a big burly dude. She said, "Can you just stop working out so much, because you're keeping us up at night with all of your banging around upstairs at night?" And he said, "I didn't want to tell you this because I was embarrassed of what happened here." He said, "I moved out 2 weeks ago because I woke up one evening and stuff was flying around the room. Objects were just flying around." He said, "I literally packed my clothes and I left the house." He goes, "I haven't been back there in 2 weeks." And literally,
In the same house. Is that where George's lived?
that's actually
The room?
exactly where it is, where George lived and where George died.
Jeez, dude. And do they still own that house?
No, so this is the thing that's interesting, is that this has been, again, my gosh, what's it been? You know, coming up on 30 years ago. And I was just talking to my good friend Dwayne, who's the one that found George. And again, we may bring him into this at some point if you guys want to continue to hear more stories. And Dwayne lived like a block away from there, you know, and he said, you know, he still goes by there. He says about every year or so,
Oh,
the
yeah.
house goes up for sale.
Yeah.
Still 30 years later, he said about every year the house has a for sale sign in it. So
Is it like a double decker, or is it?
yeah, it's a two-story
two-story?
house. It's a two-story house, and I you know,
I don't want to go in it, but I want to see it.
we can go by it. We can definitely take you guys by it and see the outside of it. And
Oh my god, dude. That is like
I would be
wouldn't wanna
terrified.
go in
Yeah, I'd be
there.
terrified to ever go in there. I mean,
Yeah.
I was,
Too
again,
much.
after George passed away, I probably was there for, a few weeks after he passed away, because we would all get together and kind of console each other. And that was the last time I ever stepped foot in that house. It was probably 3 weeks after he died, and I've never been back since. And still to this day, 30 years later, it's still haunting me. I mean, every now and then I have nightmares that I'm alone. I wake up alone in that house at night.
Really?
Like somehow I've been transported there, and I wake up alone in that house, and and just, it's the most terrifying thought ever.
Dang. That's crazy.
And that's just the start. I mean, like I said, it goes on for a long time, but we don't want to bore you. So if you want to hear more, we'll do more. If you guys are like, all right, we're sick of this, then we won't do more. It's totally up to you. We can continue on with the story and work our way through the entire 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, we might, yeah. So, thank you guys for watching. Again, comment or whatever. Do all the things that are cool. Subscribe, like, post notifications, turn those on. We don't know really which direction this series is gonna go or anything like that, so please let us know on, you guys can like kind of direct it in a way and tell us what you want to hear. Like what, like just stuff like that. So just make sure you comment, and then I'll be reading them, and just give us feedback and stuff. So anyways, thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next video. Peace.